Life is complex, so is our mental health. It cannot be understood by diagnosis alone. Our philosophy is treat the person, not the mental illness. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Humanizing Mental Health. I'm Trent Akers.
And I'm Jeremy Alcorn.
Well, today we're sitting down with another one of my wonderful practicum students, Courtney Materi.
Hi, I'm Courtney. Nice to meet everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you. And I believe you are actually a fan of our podcast.
A huge personal fan. Yes.
Yeah. And just to provide that, you started listening to us before you started the practicum, right?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. So I discovered this wonderful, incredible podcast even before I knew Jeremy or Trent. So which is a wild world, small world in medicine.
Yeah. I wanted to, like when you said you were a fan, I wanted to make sure that wasn't just because you're trying to curry favor with us.
Well, whatever works, right?
Yeah. Where it's like, I love your stuff. Oh, really? Wink, wink. How well do you like it?
That's fantastic. Guess what? You are you're amazing, and you get the best marks now as a result of that in your practicum.
How convenient.
Absolutely. Yeah. Fans get that extra 5% bump here at Psynergy.
That's what we're here for,
Absolutely.
Start with a leg up. Why not?
Yeah. Speaking of which, when you started your practicum, beyond first meeting with me, one of the things that you started to do is you went around and you met all of the practitioners here at Psynergy and kind of sat down with each of us, because we're a varied group, and got to sit in and see how we work or even talk with us. And you ended up having a very interesting conversation with Jeremy, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was the first person that me and Michelle, the other practicum student, actually sat down with. And quickly we realized that we have a lot in common in terms of our passions for philosophy and psychology and just all the things to do with the brain and all the things.
Yeah.
In fact, if I could give a little bit of window on that conversation, it was very interesting because as we started to speak and we were talking about how really recognizing the underpinnings of philosophy is actually really, really valuable, and people don't even realize what the mechanisms or the premises of their thoughts are, and that led us into a conversation, and there was a specific statement that you made that became actually, Courtney, the basis of this conversation, the notion that healing is universal.
Yeah, that's it. So we were talking a lot about, Jeremy was sharing some, personal stories of his, whether it was from his work or from his personal life. And there was a few moments where, we're all laughing, and the moments where we're tearing up. And it just, it really hit me that, a lot of we always say that trauma seems to be universal, and a lot of people share that in common. But I think what we forget is that if trauma is universal, then the healing that can come from the trauma is also universal.
Yeah, and I love that, because I think that harkens back to a lot of the conversations that we've had, because, like they always say that, that human suffrage is universal, that human suffering is universal, but what is the point after that? And, where we talked about in previous or in other podcasts about post-traumatic growth, I feel like this is really hitting on that as well.
Yeah. Kind of a little bit of a different view into maybe some of the same concepts. True. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as you said that, Courtney, as you said, healing is universal. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, that's fair. I was contemplating this the whole week, actually, and like Trent said, actually, I came across a bunch of podcasts and research talking about post-traumatic growth, and I actually realized that, in that sense, given that what happens to us is not necessarily who we are or who we started out being as children, and just as younger people until all of these experiences and things in the world started happening to us. But I think that a lot of times there's ways to reframe them, and sometimes you can look at it as things that just happen because we're human. And like you said, suffering is universal. And I think that there's a lot of healing that can be had in that as well, depending on how you frame it.
Yeah. Like one of the things that I wonder about And a couple things jump to mind, but like Trent is in the room with us, suffered an injury actually in physical development that led to a specific condition, a cerebral palsy. And are we saying that at some point in time that he's going to step out of the chair and start walking around? No, we're not saying that.
Even though at one point, I just want to be clear, I did actually walk for recreation.
Right. You were ambulatory.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But, and that's actually a really interesting concept when you bring that up, is that what does healing look like for everybody? Because then, like, where is that coming from? From, an individual lens or even an overarching societal lens?
Right.
Because, like, some people would look at me, for example, and say, if I was ambulatory, if I was doing those things, and I've even had conversations with family members where they were actually really quite upset the fact that I made the choice to not, keep engaging in trying to be ambulatory. But for me, that wasn't functional. That wasn't meaningful. Moving towards being going on and getting my master's degree and being successful in this way. This is my version and my story and my understanding of post-traumatic growth and being a fully functional human being. Being ambulatory is, what would have been nice, but it wasn't necessary.
Right. And this is where I think then we start to really maybe more look at what is that? What do we mean when we're saying healing is universal? Because I would say in many ways, Trent is in a chair, but he's actually also healed.
Yeah, no, great points, guys.
It almost makes me think of when we sit down and we have a counseling conversation with people, and we'll talk about, you and I have talked about, the miracle question, or if you're having a conversation with them and say it's like, you said to your client, if we were to meet 5 years from now and we're just having a casual conversation, what would you say? How would your life be different? And what would that mean for you?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, again, like saying that, that healing is universal, I think to give that better context, I appreciate that. And I think it is really a personal, unique and subjective journey. And now that I say subjective, it sounds like a paradoxical to universal, but I think healing is plausible for everyone. It's going to look different depending on who you are and what your journey is. And I think, again, it all depends on how you frame healing. And as Trent said really well, like what it means to you. So it's that meaning making from the trauma or from what's happened to you is what really matters, is the meaning that you make out of it.
Yeah. And there's another term. This is the other thing that jumped to my mind. I was thinking about my uncle who had cancer in his hip and had to have a piece of that bone removed. And the word that they used, which actually maybe fits really well into the conversation, is called adaptive healing.
Ooh, I love that. What's like when you hear the words adaptive healing, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, because the bone was not, the chunk of bone was sufficient that they couldn't do anything to fill that space. But the body then filled in with cartilage and things that would bridge into that space. And it meant that the body found this way to find a new balance or find a new process of functionality.
Interesting. When I hear that, it's almost like the body is using its own internal resources to meet itself where it's at.
And so one of the things that I find fascinating with this then is that it's easier for us to see physical things. Like we are, in the mental health realm, but it's just easier for people to see things that are physical. And so then if we take that and we take this example of something that's very easy to see, and then we go, what does adaptive healing or universal healing look like then within our emotional and mental wellness?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, a lot of times that's what I totally believe and feel in my soul, is that our bodies are all very, like you said, their own internal ability to heal, and they're naturally and anciently intelligent. So I think there's a lot of, our natural mechanisms that we are able to heal ourselves from the inside out. It just takes, like you said, a reframing of how we view healing and what that looks like for a person.
What does it mean to be whole? Because I think for a lot of people, it means the absence of some kind of problem, some kind of something that has gotten in the way of our routine health.
Yeah. But there again, too, when I hear that, and I almost hear a danger too, like because I hear this a lot from a lot of my clients where they have these issues and they just want it to go away. They just want it to push away. And, you think to yourself, hang on, and we talk about a quote probably that I've brought up quite a bit here and that I use quite often. It's what we resist persists. So how can we, instead of trying to push that away, incorporate that into us, almost like a tree growing around something and gaining support from that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, again, it's more integrating what's happened to you and what your experience is, as opposed to trying to, like you said, grow without it and, just be like, I can leave that here and how can I heal from that so I can leave it in the past. But I think that's the paradox of being alive, is that there's joy and there's suffering all at the same time. And it's like, how can we sit in that space and realize that that's what makes us human?
Yeah. The word that comes up for me is divorce. I want to divorce myself from that. But what if I can't? And that notion, am I healing from something? Or am I actually incorporating the experience into my life?
Yeah. I almost hear like healing with. Am I healing with this?
Yeah. Like integration more, as opposed to trying to like separate yourself from an experience.
Right. I want to go back to the way it was before. Well, what if you can't?
Yeah, it's kind of like the old parable where you can't cross a river twice.
I don't know if I understand that. I've crossed the river a whole bunch of times, same river. I don't understand the parable.
Okay, so the idea is that water is always flowing and always changing.
Yeah.
So you can never cross the same water or the same river twice.
Yeah, now I gotcha. Because a river is not a static entity. Yeah.
Nor are human beings.
Yes, sure. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That really frames it perfectly. And thank you for the explanation.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I went back to my childhood, wandering back and forth across this river fishing, thinking, wait a minute, I've crossed that river hundreds of times. What do you mean by that?
But
yeah.
I when you say that too, like that almost makes me think of sometimes people grow and change in different ways and they don't notice it because healing sometimes or change occurs naturally, and sometimes the best change is the ones that we don't fight.
Yeah. So what about in your own experience? You talk about ancient, like healing and wisdom that the body holds. I'm fascinated to know how you started to construct this way of thinking, way of being.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and I'd love to hear a little bit of your stories if you have any personal experiences with that too. But again, not an expert. Definitely did not come up with that, but it's obviously a long story like everyone's life. But I just think for me, navigating just, my own, like whether it was when I was in, as young as I can remember when I was in school, like I was always, picked on and bullied really bad. And then, went through a series of just really unfortunate relationships that were, some were abusive in different ways and just like really, so I had a lot of repetitive sort of patterns and cycles and things that continuously kept happening. And what I realized is like the common denominator in all of them, and not that I was like victim blaming myself or shaming myself, but I had to come to terms with the fact that, okay, all of these things that they're happening to me, and just for me at that personal time, I started to reframe it and say, well, how are these happening for me? and how can I reframe what's happening and what can I learn from this? And again, not that I'm justifying or excusing the behavior, but because those things were so out of my control, I realized that the only person that actually is in control of healing from those things and navigating them, instead of blaming myself or blaming anyone else, is me.
Yeah, you said that really, really well. Like, because you're very, very, I think, articulate in saying, look, I am not taking responsibility for other people's actions. And at the same time, this is my life. So I don't want somebody else to be driving my bus. I'll just end up wherever they take me. I want to take myself somewhere. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's kind of what, like I said, just the patterns that continued to happen was because I, at the end of the day, was showing up that way. And that was what I was allowing. That's the kind of person that, like, again, I've listened to a ton of podcasts lately about, a lot of times, like, let's say narcissistic people end up with codependent people. And it's the, the caretaking, sort of nurturing, mothering people that a lot of times will naturally attract people that, are looking for that in themselves. And I think at the end of the day, we're all just looking for ourselves in other people to heal. Whereas what the key that we're missing is that all of those tools and natural abilities are inside of us.
Interesting. Yeah. I kind of like what you said there in terms of we're looking to other people for that reflection. And I don't hear that you're saying that there's not value in that
Absolutely.
There is some value, but it's not just looking completely outside or completely inside, but it's about finding the balance between the two. What is the knowledge that we can take from the outside? And again, to going back to that concept of integration, how can we integrate that in a healthy way into ourselves?
Yeah. And you hear so much lately, and there's something that my gut doesn't like about it. You hear so much about narcissism, and there's something that my gut doesn't like about it, probably, quite honestly, because I could see it in myself, and know that actually I do care about people, but I got these patterns that don't work very well. And I go, well, if I see that in myself, maybe the problem really isn't narcissism. Maybe it's about someone not being able to let other people in a reasonable and healthy way. And maybe then it's reasonable for me to think and look and go, wow, I don't want to be like the drowning victim that climbs on top of the lifeguard's head and drowns them with me. Maybe that becomes more about people being able to self-reflect and see in themselves the things that they don't want to continue to happen. And maybe they can start not somehow allowing themselves to be harmed. In fact, that becomes boundaries, hard choices sometimes that people make, that they decide that I'm not going to have that person in my life and I'm going to choose the consequences that come with it. But sometimes maybe that's also about them being able to change their own energy and how they're showing up to things.
Yeah, I really like what you said there, Jared, like just in terms of being aware of these tendencies, because one thing, and I'm glad that the both of you brought up narcissism, because I think that that's entered the common zeitgeist, and I think that it's good that we're aware of what narcissism is, but I think it's really an oversimplification because narcissism, is very complex, and in some ways, people can develop narcissistic tendencies because of the environments that they've been in, and because they need to keep that energy and that love for themselves, and like you said, eventually go through, have that conversation and have that talk with that part of themselves and say, okay, thanking it for being there, for protecting you, for giving you that love, but maybe now having a conversation of how can we let other people in and share that love in a healthy way.
Yeah. For a lot of times, I think it is the the Incredible Hulk syndrome, that the person doesn't want to acknowledge that part of themselves, and they want to suppress it, and they want to keep it away. They don't want to be the monster, but then they can't control it. You got to stop trying to control it, and you got to actually shake hands with it, find it, accept it, let it melt. It's the only way it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to build on your analogy. Like, do you remember that video that I sent you a while ago about where it was that cut scene that they had in Avengers where literally Banner and the Hulk were having that conversation, and they were both scared, and rather than one trying to run away and one trying to fight, they came together and found the strength in each other. And I think that's what we can really do.
I think it's another, again, like you said, right, it's a protective mechanism. It's a coping mechanism for, for better or for worse, right? At the time, you only know what you know where you're at, right? So wherever you're at that time, all your body and your, heart and soul were just trying to do is protect you and protect that little kid that, for whatever happened to them that they couldn't protect themselves at that time. So there was, like you said, it's just a protective mechanism. It's their coat of armor.
I love it.
And so for you in your story, then you come to a place that sounds like very self-empowering for our listeners, because obviously we don't have any video. The individual that we have sitting with us, Courtney, is herself.
Oh yeah.
She shows up authentically. Like she comes dressed the way she wants to be, and is received as a person that is like, that's you. You're not like somebody else, and that's who you want to be. And I think that authenticity really, really shows. And then I see the tattoos, and I mentioned this before, but a brain on the right hand, a heart on the left hand, and that seems like it's very, very relevant in our conversation. Can you tell us about how that relates and how that relates to your notion of healing?
Yeah. And I love that too, because like you said, like everybody is unique, so the way that we all dress and again, I'm a very, I would say, very intentional person with how I show up. So I really appreciate that both of you are, able to kind of notice that energy about me. And I think by doing it, I'm hoping to, sort of walk the walk and vicariously inspire other people to do the same. But I think, for me, I don't think I would have gotten to the point of, like you said, just stepping away from, trying to people please. And like I was saying before, right, I feel like I'm a recovering people pleaser, I would say, and just, going through a lot of codependency in relationships and in friendships. And so when I finally sort of stepped back from that, it's like all of a sudden, all of the pieces that, that were me as my little child self and my younger self, which I believe is where all of our, again, like innate natural wisdom comes from. It all just sort of just start to fall back into place. And that's essentially where, where, like I said, I started getting more tattoos and, wearing different funky outfits and expressing myself in very authentic ways. But I think they're also ways that they bring me joy as me now. But it's because I feel like I'm coming home to myself, like the self that I've always been underneath of all of the things before they happened.
I'm going to draw a connection, and maybe you can tell me if this is correct or not, because you had mentioned before about those things being like us having behaviors or actions as armor. How do you view your tattoos?
Oh, that's so interesting. I always wonder, because I get a lot of, like people on the street, and Medicine's a tinier, I'd say more conservative sort of place. So I definitely stand out a bit, and sometimes people will ask me questions, or they're curious, or I'll get weird looks, or I'll get compliments, a little bit of everything. And yeah, you're right. Maybe that could, when I first started getting tattooed, I got my first one on my 18th birthday. So I think starting that quite young too, like I would totally not deny, like I'd be lying if I wasn't saying that it was a way to sort of keep people out, and show up maybe as a little bit intimidating so that I could sort of keep those boundaries that maybe I felt like I never was able to keep otherwise.
But to a certain degree, it sounds like actually it attracts people to you. Like the people that connect, they ask questions.
Welcome to why I feel like we're all just, everything I say is paradoxical, and there's always another argument.
Yeah, like because when I view them, and just based off of what you've said, I view them almost as a reminder for you to bring forward those parts of yourself that you're literally wearing, those parts, those pieces, those reminders on your body, so that you're able to share them with other people. How does that fit for you?
Yeah, and I was going to say, so like fast forward to now, I would say that's absolutely how I feel about them and why I continue to get, more and more. My goal is to just get them all over. But yeah, I think, like I said, starting out, like it definitely was a protective mechanism as well, right? Just to maybe deter certain people from, I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, now it's more of just an art of self-expression, and the fact that I, again, want to encourage other people to be just absolutely fearless with who they are,
Interesting. And like, I almost hear that, like that can almost be, again, too, hearkening back to what we're talking about, where that is your personal journey of healing. Through that, it's through your understanding of your tattoos.
It becomes like the internal becomes external, and I have nothing to fear. I don't have a mask that stops people from seeing who I am because I'm wearing it. I'm wearing it on my arms. I'm wearing it on my hands. People can see me. I don't have to hide.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think as someone who felt like that's exactly it, right? Kind of was trying to hide the majority of my life and play small, like even in a very, like, physically trying to play small, right? I think now it's doing everything just to, to be able to be vulnerable enough with myself. And so I'm doing it again, like, sure, vicariously for others, but ultimately everything I do is for me.
Sure. Yeah. Is that not what it means to be in a tribe?
Yeah, and when I hear that, and I love that you brought up the tribe, because I think what you're representing there is healthy individualism. Where you're not trying to stand out in spite of other people, but to be who you are and to integrate into the larger community.
Right. To encourage other people to say, you get to be you. Look, I'm me, and it's fine. Yeah. Look, I'm me, and it's fine. Totally. And you get to be you, and it'll be fine. You don't have to hide.
Yeah. And to find my people, like, that's the thing. When I came to Psynergy, it's so funny. It's one of the first things that I think I mentioned to you and to Donna and a few people. But I said, this is one of the few spaces I feel like in my life where I can bring all of the parts of myself to the table, the whole person, like you said, as opposed to leaving fragments and picking and choosing. This is like when I walk in the door, it's like the whole me is allowed to show up, and it's an honor and a privilege to be here.
So if you don't mind me asking, and you can tell me that you would rather not share, because tattoos can be very personal. I just am curious, the brain and the heart. So brain on the right hand, heart on the left hand. That's not a coincidence. I know that. But if you're okay sharing, what is that?
Yeah. So I feel like for me, that's interesting, because when I first went and got them done, I just thought, I love psychology and philosophy. And I was like, how can I kind of felt like both of those disciplines are a balance of both. But really what it was about getting them was because so when I was kind of like, I'd say in survival mode, and just going through the motions and just, kind of dealing with the aftermath of all of the little, traumas I went through, I feel like I lived a lot in my head. Felt like I was logically and cerebrally trying to just will myself forward. And what I realized is, that was necessary to keep me safe and to be the catalyst for my healing journey. But what I realized is it only got me so far. And I got to a certain point where I realized if I don't start integrating, the heart, the soul, the emotions, the spiritual aspect of what it is to be me, that my healing will be stunted. Because I realized that there was a lot of things that I was living in my head. And for me now, why I feel so much more at peace and ease and just, like I said, in my own authenticity, is because I feel like I've moved from just being in my head into my body. So the heart and the brain kind of represent that you need the dichotomy of both. But for me, it was necessary to move more into my body for the rest of the healing journey. Great question. Thank you.
Yeah. You, like, for the last few minutes, man, you look like you've got something running around in your head. I'm just looking over at you.
Oh yeah, you're seeing the tears in my eyes.
Yeah. So
sure. I just find this really, really important, really passionate about this, hoping that people can hear that when we say the universality of healing, what we're talking about is you can accept yourself. You don't have to somehow become something else to be good enough. That the things that have happened to you, and at times the lack of compassion, empathy, caring that was conveyed by those things that happened, by the people that were attached to those events, they don't have to determine who you are. That actually you get to discover. And there are people out there that will accept you. And being able to find that is possible. And I think that's part of what we're talking about when we're talking about the universality of healing. I can heal inside myself, and I can find where I belong.
Yeah, and you know, when you bring that up, we talk about the fact that trauma isn't what happened to you, but it's how you respond afterwards. And I think the same thing can be said for healing.
Yeah, speak to that more.
Well, because like you know, and I think it's just sort of like going back to like what we started up at the very top, like where, you know, healing is universal, but our road to healing is unique, and not everybody has to take the same road, but we can all get to those points.
Yeah, in fact, I realized for myself, I think that it's really important to me to know that healing is universal, in part because not only have I experienced pain, I've caused pain.
Absolutely.
And if I didn't believe that healing was possible in some ways, because I would give some kind of restitution. Sometimes you can't give restitution. But if I didn't believe that the healing was possible, then it means, wow, I'm responsible for that forever. I don't want to be responsible for it forever.
You know, when you bring that up and you bring up the idea of restitution, I love that. And the thing is that, like, what does restitution really mean? When I hear what you say, it's like, do I provide restitution for the individual? Sometimes that's not possible. But maybe true restitution in some instances is recognizing what you've done and striving to heal within yourself and to move forward with better actions with other people.
To show up in a different way in the future. In a way that then lines up, that I can feel like, yeah, I'm okay with how I've conducted myself.
Yeah, part of the journey, hey, we're always learning and always growing. And I think, once again, it's like these necessary, you know, things that happen, whether, you know, they look nice on the surface or not. A lot of times for us to get to that space of, you know, self-forgiveness and self-compassion, and again, empathy and compassion for others, we're not always going to be the good guy, you know, and that's okay, because we're imperfect, we're human, we're, you know, so to have that grace for ourselves also allows us to have that for others.
I love that. You know, I'm thinking about the fact we have talked about a lot today, haven't we?
Yeah.
I need a part two.
I'm sitting here and I'm trying to think to myself, you know, in the back of my therapist's mind, how would I summarize today? Because we started on one thing, and we've really crossed the gambit.
Yeah. The thread that kind of pulls through this for me is, okay, so why is it important that healing is universal? That initial message really feeling like a message to individuals that have had harm, and that message of hope is really important. Yeah. But then the other thing that developed for me as I was thinking about that in this conversation, and the learning I'm going to take away is, wow, that healing needs to happen not only for the person that was harmed, but also for the individual that's caused harm. So sitting there thinking through my life about, I've been on both sides of that coin. And I don't think I can truly heal without being able to recognize and heal from the harm I've caused to others.
Yeah, I love that. And it's, as you guys have been talking, the one thing that I think, like, really looking back on our conversation today is that for me is how I understand the things in my life that have helped me grow and change will change over the course of my life. So meaning for me is constantly shifting, and and it's always about checking in with that meaning and helping to encourage that growth.
That immediately reminded me of, which I'm sure everyone's read this book and heard of it, but The Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Good old classic.
Right. Yeah, I feel like that's all what we're, even doing in this space right now, right? Having these conversations. We're all just deeply seeking meaning making, and whatever that looks like for one person is, not good or bad, just different.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so magical.
In fact, maybe this becomes something that we push back into as some older wisdom. It's not the new cutting edge stuff, but that is probably really, really helpful. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist that was in the Jewish concentration camps, for our listeners that might not be familiar. And he came up with an idea that is, you can be happy actually in any circumstances, and concepts about what is the meaning that happens in suffering. Quick side note, and that is, unfortunately, his thoughts and teachings transitioned into people being in a spot in which you should be happy in any circumstances. That's not true. And it doesn't have anything to do with what he was saying. No. But that might be a really good reference for people that might be interested to harken back to and learn more about finding meaning and their way through suffering.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, I appreciate that, because we're not, like justifying, right, or advocating or saying that, again, like every situation is, if you're in danger, right, if you're experiencing some kind of, abuse or harm to yourself, obviously, again, like, seek the right resources, and don't just sit with that and try to will your way through it, because again, we're not justifying and saying that's okay. What we're saying is you can still find the silver lining in things.
Yeah, you can find your way through it. Sometimes that's with hard choices.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, on that note.
Oh, yeah. That's my line. Okay, now I'm quoting Robin Williams. You stole my line. Good Will Hunting.
It's the best.
Yeah. On that note, I'm Trent Nakers.
And I'm Jeremy Alcorn.
See you next time.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope that this message has been as meaningful to you as it has been to us. If you're looking for help, you can find us on Facebook at Humanizing Mental Health.